Welcome everyone to episode 178 question mark of the JSB GamesCast. I'm your host Rob, aka Zen. Joining me today, my lovely friends, Ryan. How are you?
What's up? How we doing? Doing all right. Can't complain. Just
good.
Enjoying another sweet JSB GamesCast podcast, and been playing a lot of different things. So,
ooh. I'm excited to hear about all those things. Also joining me, Drew. How are you?
I'm alive. I've actually been actively playing video games.
Whoa.
That's wild. I got sick, so I had no choice.
It sucks being sick, but I also appreciate the sickness that came through to force you to play some video games. So it's... that's kind of cool.
I was gonna say, that checks out.
I myself am doing pretty okay. I'm also playing through a video game that I think I'm kind of obsessed with. But before we get into all of that stuff, just some basic housekeeping stuff to go over. By the time listening to this, we do have the JSB Anime Cast episode that is up. We just recently talked about Fooly Cooly, FLCL. That is a very crazy and bombastic show, but also has a lot of heart and talks about, growing up and stuff like that. It's a very good coming of age story in between all of its craziness. It was the first time viewing for one of our hosts, and that was a very unique experience for them. So if you're interested
I did not catch any of that when I watched that show.
It's a fascinating show to watch as an adult. I've had the pleasure of watching that show a lot because it is one of my favorite shows. So I watched it when it originally aired, and everything that it talked about went over my head because of how insane that show is, right?
Right.
And periodically I've rewatched it as I've grown up, and every time I watch it, I catch something new, and it is really fun watching that show now as an adult, having not seen it in probably like 10 years at this point, as a full-grown adult looking at it, and it is a vastly different show than how I first watched it. Highly recommend checking it out. Or if you want some direction or something to kind of help you focus in on a rewatch, listen to the episode. This way you can get your mind in the right place and know what to look for when you rewatch it, right? So definitely catch that episode. The next episode is going to be Summertime Rendering, which is an anime that I picked. Nobody has seen it. I haven't seen it. And it's going to be a very interesting one, having just watched the first episode today. So stay tuned for that stuff. It's good content. Please check that out. With that out of the way, video games. Lots and lots of video games. Can I volunteer to go first?
Absolutely, go for it.
Cool. So before we get into big discussion, I finished Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Kind of like last week, Drew will kill me. So I won't say anything to violently kill me at that. I do just want to say that having sat with it for a little while at this point, because I beat it last week, early last week, I believe it was. I think that's my favorite Xenoblade Chronicles. I'm still going back and forth between that and 1. But I put it on that same level and that same tier.
This is without the DLC, right?
This is without the DLC. I won't get to the DLC probably until like September, if I'm being generous. So just base game. It is very, very high up there, and over the course of this year, I would like to go back in and like do some more of the side quests and probably like fully complete that game, right? Because I think about that game a lot, and there's a lot of cool stuff in it. So it definitely, I think, has my favorite cast. I think it has my favorite combat system as well. It just has a lot of my favorites in it, and it you know.
Once again, it was refreshing to hear good things about this game.
I also talked to Carrie about it too, and it's really fun because we both really love this game. So it's been fun kind of like getting the spoiler stuff out of my system through somebody that was also on a very similar wavelength with it. So definitely, whenever people get a chance to play it, it is a long game. You guys know how I will quickly go through a thing, like when I'm very motivated to. I set out on a mission to beat this game quickly because I wanted to beat it before Final Fantasy XVI dropped. It still took me 80 hours to complete.
Sheesh.
Yeah, let that sink in. It took Rib 80 hours, which means any of you normal fuckers is probably going to take you at least 120. Drew, it'll probably take you 200.
Hey, look, I like to really dig in.
No, I understand. And believe you me, there is a lot to dig into that game. A lot. You can argue whether or not most of it is good quality, because like side quests can be hit or miss. But I assure you, there is a lot of them.
That is the Xenoblade special, to be honest.
It is. I will say that it does have really good character quests, right? And
That's how 2 was. That's how 2 was. Like, they were really good character quests, but like the generic side quests were pretty lame.
Pretty lame, right?
Yeah.
I think the character quests in this game are much stronger than 2's.
Okay.
So keep that in mind. And I think there's more of them.
Less grindy than 2, because like that was an issue I had with 2, where like trying to flesh out all the character stories required a lot of grinding because you had to level up their blade levels.
So
really irritating.
There's no grinding in that sense. I would say there's very little actual grinding to do in this game. There is a mechanic in place that helps prevent that, or helps like mitigate that. Where like normally, if that mechanic was not in place, there would be a lot of grinding involved. But there's a cool thing to kind of like mitigate that stuff, and it's like, all right, this isn't nearly as bad as it.
Do they also get rid of field skills?
Yes.
Oh, thank God.
In the way that in the way that 2 does it, right? Like, it is awful how 2 handles field skills. In 3, it's more like you gain like a permanent like field skill, right? Where it's like,
field skills are the bane of my existence.
It's awful. So it's like you get past a certain point, and it's like, okay, now you can climb this certain thing. Cool. You never have to do any menuing, no switching. It's just cool. Now you have access to more areas. Go do the thing. There's no grinding involved. It's just, I complete a quest, I get a new skill, cool, I can do more exploration. Simple, easy, done.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that a lot.
Oh my God, it's great from that standpoint. So it's cool, man. I really like that game. I cried at the end. There's one very specific frame in the ending where I did like the hardest eye roll, and Drew, you're gonna know immediately. My eyes could not roll farther to the back of my head, and I cracked up. But all in all, it is a fantastic ending. Like, it's a great start, and I think they land the plane very, very well. Yeah. With that out of the way, I have also been playing a lot of Final Fantasy XVI. A lot of Final Fantasy XVI. If I was not busy yesterday, because I did spend most of the day out of the house, I probably would be done right now. Like, I feel like I am I'm close to like the end. It wouldn't surprise me if like we get off this call, an hour and a half goes by, and I'm at like the point of no return. If there is a point of quote unquote point of no return, right? So I'm there. I'm at the gates. I love this game. I don't know. I've been struggling to figure out how I wanted to talk about this game because it does a lot of things I think really smart and really, really well done. But I kind of got like some early impressions out of the way last time. I know Drew, you started it. I wanted to see like where you are currently feeling, because like I was very high on the demo, and I was really excited to get into it, and I had touched it, but I know you hadn't had a chance to touch it at that point. So I want to know like where do you stand on everything?
All right. Do we want to do this now, or do we want to go over the other stuff that I wanted to talk about?
I mean, you can lead on.
Okay. So before we get into the Final Fantasy 16 discussion, like, did you have any other games you want to talk about, or was it just 16?
It was Xenoblade, and 16 was my goal.
Okay, so
I was using that as like a sort of transition since we both played both of them. But if you want to go into a different thing, sure.
Well, no, we'll go into 16 here. So I have been playing Final Fantasy 16. A little later than other folks because the game just isn't grabbing me in the same way I would expect. You know what? I had a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? I had a lot of preconceived notions about this game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing those preconceived notions like really not come to fruition, and like it's not grabbing me in the way I was expecting it to. And like the game does things that I think I'm like, okay, that was really cool, but then the game like immediately flips and then does something that kind of annoys me.
Mm-hmm.
And like I don't have the background of, you know, being a fan of a Yoshi P game before. I didn't play Final Fantasy 14 really. I played like maybe 10 hours of it. It also didn't really grab me, but I figured that was like more of the MMO style thing. MMOs just aren't really my thing.
That one also takes a very long time to get its hooks in anyway, by default, to be quite honest.
Fair. But for me, for 16, like among like almost in every aspect, I'm just like, this is good, but I was expecting so much more, I think.
Like a case of like really high expectations that are being met, basically.
I think so. I mean, for one, so I feel like the game started off pretty strong in terms of its story, but like as I've played more, every story beat I have encountered has been pretty like by the numbers, and like I saw coming from a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, man, for a game that's supposed to be like very Game of Thrones inspired, this feels very like cut and dry and by the numbers, and like I don't know, it's not doing the things I want it to do, I guess. Mm-hmm. I mean, so far it's pretty standard in terms of storytelling. Like there's some moments that like there are definitely some moments where I feel like I'm supposed to feel something here and I'm not, which is wild because I wear my fucking emotions on my sleeve. I cried at pixel art on the other game that I played. So like these are supposed to be actual like people. And just it's missing the mark for me a bit in terms of the storytelling. The music, I think the music is really good. I do think that I am not the biggest fan of Soken's style. Soken has a very particular style where like the music is very good in the moment. It's very good. Don't get me wrong. Like I think like on fucking paper, like you spell this out, the songs are very good. But like they're so active and like there's a lot of things going on in these songs that like I find it really hard to lose the melody, and therefore the songs end up not being memorable to me, if that makes sense.
The part that kind of made me go was more like a very particular style, because I think Soken has the most range out of just about anybody. But I think about like his entire like discography, right? Where in this game, Yoshi P approached him and specifically said, "Hey, I want you to do a classical style for this OST."
Okay.
Like he had very like concrete instructions on like what he wanted for this game. To which led to a very funny discussion where Soken was like, "Yeah, I follow pretty much what Yoshi P wanted, except for a few instances," and then the entire Final Fantasy community exploded because we know what that meant. So it's funny because like there is a very like the music that is in this game is very like consistent, right? Like it,
yes.
And for me,
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, and for me, I love everything that's there. Like I really dig this OST, but it is, I think, in a lot of ways, outside of some very key moments, it's almost like a very like subtle soundtrack.
In a way.
And I don't know, like I feel like the OST that's playing for all the moments are like very appropriate for what's going on screen. And I feel like the music guides me through those scenes incredibly well in a way that like a lot of other games don't. Like the scenes are like tailored to the music, which is something that like Soken goes out of his way to do. So it's funny that it's kind of missing the mark for you in that way, because that is like his whole philosophy on making.
It's not necessarily missing the mark per se, because again, I think the songs are very good, and I think that they do fit the scenes that they are there. It's just the style that these songs are done is very classical, very bombastic, orchestral style.
Yes, yeah.
And melodies do not stick with me in a way like. For a track to really stick with me, it's like I'll hear it and then like I'll be out like grocery shopping or something and I'll just like start humming it. And like these songs are like so complex and bombastic that it feels impossible for me to remember what those songs even are. If that makes any sense.
I think it does because I think the songs aren't meant to be that way, right? So I don't think of it in the way of like I'm going to remember these songs in the way that you're specifically referencing, like being out and about and like, oh, this track comes to my mind, right? But what I appreciate is like how well do these songs fit in the moment for which I am playing this game, and I feel like
I think in that regard they definitely do hit. They definitely do hit.
Right, and I find that is something that I value a lot. Maybe more so than me like humming it later on. And I think that's like what I really appreciate out of this game.
I say that in a regard to they don't stand out in that. Like they fit the moments that they are trying to fit, and in the moment they are very good. But at the end of the day, they don't stand out to me is the problem that I ultimately reach. The me humming it later is just an example of that. Like the songs don't stay with me.
Right.
They are good for what they are, but they just don't stay with me. And you know, that may change. Like I think it's either the mini boss theme or like one of the boss themes is relatively sticking with me. And Ron and I have, like I talked with my buddy Ron, and we both have had agreed that it's probably one of our favorite songs in the OST so far. And like things like the Akon battle, like the Akon battle song is pretty tight. And I've noticed that they're using the same theme for every Akon battle fight, or at least the ones that I've done so far. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm about that. Like those songs are good. And I don't know. It's just, I think the soundtrack is good. I just wish the track stood out to me a bit more.
Understandable.
And then finally, I think the biggest offender to me in this game is the combat. I don't know if I really care for the combat in this game. You know, I play a wide range of action RPGs, from Ys to fucking Trials of Mana to, I don't know, you name it, I've probably played it. like Xenoblade. I've played various action battle systems, and like something about this system just feels very basic, especially coming from the Devil May Cry battle director. Well, I mean this respectfully. When you said that this game is Devil May Cry, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. I do not get that feeling when I'm playing this battle system. It feels very cut and dry. When you're fighting smaller enemies, it's fine. It does feel a little bit like Devil May Cry because like you can juggle enemies and like they go flying all over the place, and like that part's cool. The issue is
exact tools.
I mean, yes, you do, but the problem is like those fights are few and far between, and the fights you encounter more are enemies with like will gauges, which are like mini bosses or just like bigger enemies that you encounter more and more and more as the game goes on. And these fights feel like a slog. Essentially, what it is it reminds me very much of like boss fights in Tales of Arise, where like you have like this very fluid battle system where like you're going through and you're doing all like these crazy attacks and these juggles, and then you go into a fight against a tougher enemy, whether it be a boss fight or even a mid boss or just an enemy with heavy armor, and like all these wild actions that you want to do, you can't do because the enemy that you are fighting just doesn't care and will swing on through all of your attacks. And Devil May Cry has those, like that's what boss fights are in Devil May Cry. But my issue with this is like and this is just so far mini. I haven't gotten to the actual boss fights yet. The mini boss fights, the enemies have way too much health. It takes forever to break down their will to stagger them, so you can just like unload like all of your attacks and do as much damage while they're just sitting there on the ground staggered. And like I don't know, it gets very repetitive and not very fun after a while. Because like you have to sit here, you have to dodge these attacks, and like they're so telegraphed that like, okay, here comes big swing, we dodge, we do some damage, we do some will damage. Okay, they're half stunned. Now we can do like a little bit of damage, and then we get back to doing it. We bring down the other half of the will gauge, and now they're staggered. And now like you unload on them, and that did maybe like a third of their life bar, and now we have to go through it again and knock them down, and then eventually like they die. And that gets like, I feel like those fights are 5 minutes longer than they need to be. And like it gets to a point where I just get annoyed at those fights because I just want them over and done with, and I want to like keep moving along because I don't find those fights fun or engaging. That's kind of juxtapositioned with the boss fights because the boss fights are so grandiose. I do enjoy them, or at least the real boss fights that I've done thus far, like the Garuda boss fight or the Ifrit boss fight. Like those were really fun and really cool and like very cinematic. But at the same time, those also do things that I don't really care about. Like there's a greater emphasis on QTEs, which personally I'm not a big fan of. I find them really like off-putting. Like they pull me out of the game, and like there's all these particle effects everywhere, and just like I understand it's supposed to be for a cinematic effect. I mean, hell, they're even called like cinematic attacks, cinematic dodges, and cinematic clashes or whatever. But like I don't feel like those need to be there to like level up the epicness of this boss fight. For example, Final Fantasy VII Remake had very cinematic boss fights. In fact, if you go back to whatever episode I was talking about that game, I was saying like that was my favorite part of Final Fantasy VII Remake is the boss fights were so cool and they felt so cinematic without actually like having to pull me out of the fight. It felt like I was playing a cutscene. Whereas in Final Fantasy XVI, it feels like I'm interacting with a cutscene. And like the game wants me to feel like I'm a part of the cutscene by doing these QTEs, but in actuality, like I'm just like, okay, I pressed the button at the right time, and like I can't get integrated in that way. And maybe some people can. Like Rob, I know you said like you're about it. You like leaned all the way into it, and that's cool. But that is a turn off for me, and that's something that I don't really care for, and I wish the game didn't do. That being said, like the boss fights are definitely like more enjoyable than the wheel-based enemies. Even though like the fights are the same, the boss fights are at least a bit more varied than like the mini boss fights. And like, so that I keep getting more tools as the game like evolves, and like they placate me for like a little bit, and then like I just realize we're back in the same loop, and I'm like, all right, the combat is not awful enough to where I wouldn't do. I mean, I played fucking Nier Replicant. Like, combat is very basic. I foresee myself getting to the end of Final Fantasy XVI, but again, like I had a preconceived notion that it was something very different, and it's not what it's paving out to be. And then I think the other aspect that really took me by surprise is how linear the gameplay has been so far. So Final Fantasy XVI takes a sort of like chapter-based sort of progression. Not really, like it's not saying chapter this, although it does throw up chapter names every time a new chapter starts. And like the maps that you go on.
It is very stage-based.
Stage-based.
So they did include like an option for like the Devil May Cry sickos that like to do like stylish action mode stuff to where like you can replay stages. So they do like pace this out in stages. So I look at it more like that, right? Which was something that they've been very upfront about, right? Where this is going to be a very more like focused game, right? And you do have open areas that you get to, and there is like exploration elements in those bigger areas. But for the most part, it is a much more like focused linear game than other like RPGs today.
Which, to be honest, trying to go in blind, I might have missed that upfrontedness about it. Like that was the other thing. I tried to go into this game blind because I didn't want to know anything. And so that's on me in terms of like not realizing that this game was more stage based. And like, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. There are a lot of good things that come from linear based gameplay, especially like when you're trying to tell like a really strong, cohesive story. So I get that. I'm just surprised, and it's a bit off coming from a RPG. I don't know. It's weird. It's not bad per se. It's just weird to me. And, you know, I was talking to Ron about this, and I'm like, isn't this how people said Final Fantasy 13 was played? And he's like, the first one, yes. 13.2 and 13.3, no. But that is how it was explained to me. It is very reminiscent of FF13. Yeah. And again, that is just hearsay to me. But I mean, I'm still playing because like I still have questions about where the game is going. A lot of the games, like, hey, big reveal that is done for me so far. I'm just like, yeah, I know. So I'm curious to see where we go from here.
Mm. True. I think so. I'm trying to figure out like where to start because I didn't have too many gaps to have the back and forth in there.
Sorry.
So as far as like the story goes, I am with you in that like it is. So this story is not groundbreaking. I will say that it is not a groundbreaking story. But what I do like about it. What I actually love about it, quite honestly, one is how focused it is, how focused it is, and two, I don't need a story to be necessarily groundbreaking, but I appreciate how it's told, and it's like I also like see what's coming, right? But I also don't particularly care because I enjoy how it's done. Right? Like I don't find it to be like done poorly. And that's kind of what I'm here for. Like as long as you tell me like a good solid story that doesn't feel like I'm missing anything, like I'm here for that. Especially with like more recent Final Fantasy entries that have been very fragmented or just feeling incomplete, right? It is nice to have a story that knows what it wants to tell, goes for that, doesn't need to like break ground. It just needs to like tell me a very solid, cohesive story, and that's what I'm getting out of this. And I appreciate the story that it's telling. Like I like the setup for the story. I like the characters that are here. I think the performances have been stellar from the English cast. And
It's been hit or miss for me.
oh, really? What's been a miss?
The whole flashback portion was
Really?
yeah. No, I didn't really hit with me. I didn't care for young Clive or young Joshua.
Dang, I love both of them. So for me, like, all that stuff is hitting where I need it to hit. And there are moments that for me are like legitimately emotional that I get caught up in. Again, it is not something that like it's not that I don't see it coming, but with how it's presented, with how it's told, and with how it's performed, I'm still able to be with it in that moment and feel what I need to feel for it. I'm not like looking for anything more than what the game is sort of presenting itself to me, if that makes sense. As far as like the combat goes, this is a very interesting one, because we're on complete opposite ends of the spectrum, where I adore this combat system. I love it to death, and the more that I unlock, I really liked it in the beginning. Like I love the tools that I had, even when I just had the Phoenix power. When I just had that, I was having fun, like learning about all the things that I can do with it. And I'm not like a big, huge like combo head, right? Like I don't typically dig super fucking deep into action games that hard. But it was very cool learning that like, oh, air burning blade is a launcher. All right, cool. I like how active that I can be with the combat, in terms of like, I like how they implemented magic bursts, right? So like the BPM in the game can be particularly high if you want it to be. And I think that's the key, is like if you want it to be. And where I think the game, or rather the design of the game is really well done, because you get out of this game kind of what you want to put in. It's like it's like for Devil May. Let me back up for a second. So the producer, the battle director for the game, Ryota Suzuki, worked on Devil May Cry 5, worked on Dragon's Dogma, and a lot of other action games out of Capcom. He had an interview recently where he said he thinks Final Fantasy 16 is his personal masterpiece. Right, which caused like a big sort of controversy. Well, not really controversy, but like a very big discussion, right? Because there are people that are on the side of like, hey, 16 isn't quite hitting in the way that I was expecting out of like the Devil May Cry director, basically, right? But when I take a step back and think about what he possibly meant by that, I think I really understand it, and I think I agree with him in that one of the cool things about Devil May Cry is like sort of the combo and combat expression that you can get out of that game, right? Particularly out of like the smaller enemies, right? Because you do find yourself fighting smaller enemies. And then when you do have like the big bosses, they are very different, right? But all the tools that game sort of gives you is very, very cool when it clicks for the player, right? And they give you a ton of tools in those games, right? But that can also be very hard for more average players to do the cool things in those games, right? Because those games are very complex, right? Especially when you think about Devil May Cry 5 Dante and like his move list, or when you think about playing as V, which is a very different character for those types of games, so like a puppet style character. And Nero has always been kind of the more friendlier to get into, but it's very, very hard to do like the super fucking really cool shit that you see like on Twitter, right? But I think what Final Fantasy 16 really accomplishes, and it does, the more abilities you unlock, the more I get it, is that from all skill levels, you can do a cool thing on the screen, right? It is not hard to do a juggle. It is not hard to do like Ifrit's ignition into like Torgal launch, like into Garuda air move that looks cool. Like all these things are very cool looking to do, right? But at a very like higher level of this game, you have the things like enemy step. You have the things where like you can take on an enemy that has like the will gauge, for example, and never touch the fucking ground. Right? That requires like way higher execution. So for like those heads that want something very deep or way deeper, the mechanics are there to do that, right? Because you have like your character Clive, you have all those tools. You have like your standard combos. You have a puppet as well with Torgal. You have Buster Shot. You have a hook shot. You have all the things that you would normally do, and you can do all those cool things at all different levels of play. And I find that brilliant. So I get it from that perspective of like, he kind of made the game where anybody can pick this game up and do something really fucking cool. And it feels, in my opinion, feels good to do for those smaller enemies. And again, the more abilities you unlock, I think further emphasizes that. Like every mechanic that you can think of is in this game. Every single one of them. Virgil Swords is in this game without being actual swords. And I find that very cool. When it comes to the will gauge, when it comes to mini boss fights, or boss fights that aren't particularly icon fights, or anything where the combat sort of slows down and it's less focus. Well, not necessarily a less focus, because you can be hyper aggressive in those fights if you want to, because again, things like enemy air step having invul allows you to stay in that ass if you want to, and not really give a care for like what the enemy is doing if you want to keep up the aggression. I've seen some really fun clips and that stuff that I'm like, whoa, I will never be able to do that. I play a much more passive style. But I think that the game also rewards like defensive play in a way that I really appreciate as well. So I think having like both a just dodge and a parry, weapon parry, is really fucking cool. And like feels good to do. And what I mean by feels good is like the dodge has like a decent amount of invul on it, and like it has a decent amount of like a lenient frame window to hit like the perfect dodge, right? There is recovery at the end of it, so you can miss it, you can hit, you can slip up, but it's open enough to where like, again, I think just about anybody picking up the game can do it at least pretty consistently. But when you hit it, like the way that it sort of takes like a cinematic angle to it, like you get a little bit of like the hit stop, like to kind of sink in like what you just did, like that whole sequence gives me a dopamine hit. Like it feels good to do and it looks good to do. And out of that, you have two different options where you can go for a melee strike or you can go for a magic strike, depending on what the enemy is doing. So like there are some enemies that'll like charge at you where you'll do a perfect dodge out of it. Melee strike is gonna miss. So the idea is like, in this moment, let me do the magic strike instead, so this way I can take off a little bit of the willful gauge. Cool. Later you get a ring, which is pretty cool, the Berserker ring, that like changes that up in a way that like if you do a perfect dodge, it puts you in limit break status for a brief period, and that looks really sick. Like I get a dopamine hit every time I do it, because I'm like, yo, the dodge, you get like the cinematic thing, and then he's like flame fucking on, and I'm like, hell yeah, let's fucking go. And when you hit like the melee parry just right, that also feels really good. Like when you intentionally do it, it's like, again, dopamine hit, and it triggers Bayonetta's Witch Time, which I think is also a very cool thing. And as you unlock more abilities in the game, there are also other abilities that like can cater to that style as well, that have enhanced effects if you do XYZ thing. So there are other abilities that act as a parry, that will have like a bigger effect if you use it as a parry. And now I have a whole kit where like my whole shtick is just I am parrying and dodging all day, and that feels fucking good to do. You don't have to play it that way. You can be very aggressive. There are plenty of abilities to do that. but that is a way for this game to cater to my particular playstyle. That is like both viable to do and also feels good to do. Garuda has one, which the skill tree you unlocked has one where like they do the back step and then it does like a combo thing, right? Gambit. Yeah, Rook's Gambit, right? That has a perfect dodge effect to it that gives you an enhanced follow-up on it.
I'll be honest, I've been using that because that feels like it adds an extra layer to the Will boss fights. But
it does. It does. It gives you just more options for it, right? And I like that. So like those boss fights now kind of turn into, for me, is more of just this game of like, can I hit all my perfect dodges? Can I hit my parries? Like, I'm playing around the boss's attacks, right? And I have enough abilities to like that willful gauge goes down pretty quickly. Like I will concede to the point that like the beginning of that game, it does take a little bit to knock that stuff down. You don't have a lot of tools at your disposal. That gets better over time. Like with each additional skill tree you unlock, you get more, and those fights get quicker. Believe me, they do. And
I would counter with that. I wish that it wasn't such a slog at the beginning, assuming it does get better, because that can be a bit of a turnoff.
It can, and I realize, maybe I'm in the minority here. I don't find those fights to last that long at the end of the day. Like I've played plenty of games where fights have lasted longer. Xenoblade Chronicles, and all of them have had fights that have lasted longer than I have played in this game. Aside from like one very specific fight I've had in this game the other day, that I think was a true slog in a sense, but also I was like, well, what's happening on screen is actually really fucking sick, so I'm going to let it slide because again, my brain is in here. But I had fun with the tools that I started off with. Like, I have fun doing like the act of playing and doing like combo magic burst, combo magic burst, combo magic burst, and then hitting like the precision strike with Torgal. Like that feels good to me, and that's kind of what I'm just here for. Like, does that feel good to me? And all of that stuff sort of does. And then as you give me more abilities, I'm like, oh, cool. Let me play with these, and that adds to more fun. So like for me, I had fun from the beginning, but I get it. I understand that maybe that like for others that can be a turnoff. For me personally, it just wasn't. I'd never felt like it was a slog almost at any point.
I don't know. I feel, and it's particular with boss fights like these, and of course this is in a very post Souls world. I hate to incur those words in this conversation, but like boss fights in action games have like I have a somewhat checklist of things that I need a boss fight to do for it to truly be engaging, and especially in these action games that are very like BPM, like high action, like combo oriented boss fights. Like I need them to give me something that sort of matches that. And like sometimes I feel like games sort of miss the mark on that. Tales of the Arise is a good example of where boss fights felt like a true slog and felt like I was playing two different games in terms of like the normal battles versus the boss fights. And like I get that same sort of feeling when I play 16, not to that same degree, because again I can understand like the boss fights in this game are a bit more soulsy, and where like there's more emphasis on like being able to dodge consistently and like get your hits in, and like that's fine. There's just an aspect of it where like 16 doesn't feel as good as a Souls game to me personally. That could just be a me thing, and I think that's where I'm coming from. Now again, like the major boss fights have had a combination of like the attack waves are like varied enough, and like the experience is cinematic enough to where like I'm like, okay, this boss fight is cool. Like the whole Garuda experience was really, really tight. But like at the same time, fights versus like their Dragoon made me want to kill myself.
Again, like that fight didn't last that long though. That fight is like it like when I look back at it, like I never felt like that fight lasted. I agree though that like it took longer than it should because you don't really have anything like it does. But also it wasn't like a sticking point. Like it just did not stick with me at all. I was just like, all right, cool, we're done. Like 3-4 minutes, we're done. All right, moving on. You know? So it's
I don't know. It just stuck out to me that just like this feels awful. It just did.
It'd be that way. That's all.
I mean,
it'd be that way, you know. I don't know. I'm curious if the game turns the corner at some point in those regards. I kind of feel like maybe not. I don't know. By this point, but maybe. I don't know.
I mean, I am committed to see it through to the end. I might not dig as much as I would in another game that I would play, but I'm at least going to see the main scenario to the end.
True. Yeah.
I would say I was going to say like maybe if the game gave me the ability to play as other characters, where like I would have even more tools and I could like, because like I really wish I could have played as Sid, or like I really wish I could play as Jill right now, and I can't. Because like that was another thing that like I hate. It doesn't feel fair to compare this game to FF7 Remake, and again now I feel like those guys that compared every Final Fantasy to Final Fantasy VII.
Of course, that's how it goes, right? You have the one that is in mind, and it's like, all right, here's what I'm going to compare it to because this is what I want.
I mean, yeah,
and that's not like a wrong feeling, right? And that's kind of why I say like meet the game on its terms kind of deal, right? Where it's like, for me, I don't need it to be that, and I'm not looking for it to be that, and I'm okay with that.
Well, I don't need it to be that. That's the thing.
You know?
I am okay with meeting the game on its terms. But the caveat there is I have to like the game.
Yeah, that's also true. And if it doesn't work out for you, it doesn't, you know?
Like I'm trying to think of an example of like, okay, so let's break it down for an example. You know how much you like Memories of Celceta?
I do like Memories of Celceta.
But you really don't like E7.
Yeah.
And like the terms are just slightly ever so different between those games. I think it's something very similar for me with that. Where just like there's just this one thing that's keeping me from being like, yeah, okay, I'm about it.
Yeah. True. That sucks, man.
I'm not trying to be a contrarian for contrarian's sake.
I don't think you are, because like I've read people that also feel similar. You know, like for a section of people, like it doesn't hit. You know? It's just kind of like how it is, and you know, it's cool. It be that way. But I know, like, for me, it checks all the boxes that I need, you know? And I feel like
I've already knew that going, like, even before we went into the gate. I kind of had a feeling.
It's just, that's what I said. Like, I know where this conversation is going to go, right? We're going to stand on completely different sides of it. Like, I will walk away from this game going, I think this is one of my favorite games this year. And I have it's sitting at a very, very high place for me. I love the tone that this game goes for. It doesn't always hit, but I appreciate how explicit it is at times.
I do think it's a bit all over the place at times.
Really?
Like, sometimes it just throws cutscenes at me where I'm just like, okay, who are you? And, like, what is going on? Like, the cutscene between, like, Odin and Bahamut. And I'm just like, what is going on and why is this relevant to me?
Oh,
like, I had, like, well, I'm sure I will. I would hope that the game would tell me what the fuck's going on. But like at that time, I'm just like, what is this going on? This has nothing to do with what was going on in the story. I have zero context to this. I can kind of guess who Odin is. Like, I kind of get that. But like, I have no idea who this dude he's fighting is. So
I feel like a lot of games do that. They just switch to something, and you're like, well, I don't know what to take from this yet, but I'm gonna think about it later. To that note, one thing I really do like about this game is I do like its active lore system. I think that is like a really cool thing. It is a lot of reading, but I appreciate. What's that?
That text is very small.
It is very small text. I told you guys this game has small text. But I appreciate at any point in the game to be able to pull it up and kind of like be like, okay, can I get a profile of who are the major actors that are being talked about or in this scene right now, right? Because there is like a lot of characters and a lot of things that are at play. And later, there's a even bigger active time lore system that is in play. That I think is very cool.
I'm missing something.
Active time lore?
Active time? Yes.
So anytime you're in a cutscene, you just hold the touchpad button, and it brings up a window, and it's basically like a bunch of bubbles, and basically it could be like the name of the characters that are on screen, the name of the nations, or whatever. You click it, and it gives you like a breakdown of like who they are, what their situation is, and it gives you more lore that not necessarily you need to understand the story, but it helps like fill out the rest of this world in your mind.
Okay, I didn't understand what that was. Gotcha.
It's a really fucking cool system that I wish a lot of other games will like implement going forward.
I'll agree with that. I do like that.
And later there's like an enhanced version of it that is super fucking detailed in a way that is like y'all thought through everything about this world in a way that like again is not needed to understand what is going on, because I think the main plot of this game is very it is easy to follow, right? But it is very cool to help fill out the rest of this world should you have questions of like, what has this nation been doing all of this time? Well, we have an answer for you. Here you go. And it's broken down in a way that I think is really fucking cool. So that is something that I also think is like this game does really well. Yeah, I don't know, man. This game is special to me in a lot of ways. And I look forward to rolling credits and after we record this podcast.
For what it's worth, I think it's very healthy to have two polar opposites, because I think it breeds a discussion for, our viewer base who might like be on the fence of like whether they should play this game or not. And so like you have these two viewpoints that could address their like concerns, or other people where they're yeah. There you go. Ryan's like the perfect example.
The judge.
And like, again, I don't think the game is a bad game. I don't think the game, by the end of it, is going to meet what I wanted it to do. Mm-hmm. But I'm still going to see it through to the end.
He's going to see it, y'all.
At the very least, because I know it's like a 30-hour campaign, so I'll be able to blitz through it fast. That's what your boy said. So,
is it 30 hours? The game doesn't have an hour count on it. Hour counter.
The PlayStation does.
Does it? Where at?
On the home screen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when you highlight the game, that's how I know I have 160 hours in Street Fighter V.
Oh, hang on. I want to see how many hours I have. We're going to do this live. Let me see.
Real time hearing of Rob turning on his PS5.
This is the active time lore for this podcast. How many hours does Rob have on FF16?
I have 15 hours currently.
15. So you go on the home screen?
Yeah, on the home screen where the media bar is up top.
Yeah.
And then like it says like where it would say continue where you left off, return to game, play game, etc.
Yeah.
And then on the very right hand side, you'll see like a little castle thing with flag, and that has a percentage.
Dang,
What's playtime?
I've only played 25 hours of this game.
Damn. So yes, it is 30 hours.
Holy shit! I feel like I've dumped like 80 hours into this game. Like my brain is fucking on another level. I am absorbed so hard that I'm like, damn, how'd I put in like 80 hours into this game?
Moral of the story: time flies when you're having fun, I guess. With Rob,
it does, dude. It really does. That's so funny.
Or in this case,
it's really funny.
Or in this case, for Drew, he felt like he's put 80 hours in because it's a slog.
No, I actually hadn't thought I'd put in 15 hours yet, so that was a bit surprising. Now that pales in comparison to my 1,542 hours in Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle. But
Jesus Christ,
that's a lot of time in that game.
That is a lot of time. So yeah, that's the FF16 discussion. Cool beans. What else have you been up to?
I'm still playing Street Fighter 6. I actually made it to Master Rank this past week.
Good job. Hell yeah.
Wednesday. Thank you. It was, you want to talk about a slog? That was a fucking slog. Getting to Master Rank took a while. It took playing a lot of people. And I'm happy that I managed to do it. That was like one of the first goals I set to myself when I started playing Street Fighter 6. And I'm glad that, I met that goal. I think the next goal is to try and make it to top 100 DJs on Ranked. I would like to see that come to fruition. As you all know, I went to CEO last weekend. My record was 2-2. So we managed to not go 0-2, which was my main wish, was to not go 0-2. Still, at the end of the day, you wish you could have always done better. But for someone who hasn't played Street Fighter seriously for almost 10 years, I'm okay with that. And when I was on stream, I put on a good show. So that's all I can ask for. And now we just take it back to lab. We have Evo in about a month. Actually, exactly a month.
That is crazy.
So, is it really a month away? Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Registration closes this week, I think, right? Or next week?
Yep.
Wow.
So I will start grinding away for that.
Shout out to Evo breaking all sorts of records for entrants.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. I saw Guilty Gear broke their record earlier today as well. So like it's going to be huge all around.
Yeah, Street Fighter 6 is over 5,000 people.
Yep. I think Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is on track to break their record. They're not far.
Yep.
Which good
last
for
I
them.
checked either. Hell yeah. Very good for them. So that's going to be exciting. That's going to be a good time.
So that is my current musings on Street Fighter 6. Game's still a lot of fun. I've noticed for some players the honeymoon period has ended. So now we get to deal with that aspect. There is also Capcom needs to deal with the throw tech option select.
Right, we were mentioning that earlier.
They're already aware of it. I imagine we'll have a patch for it within the next week or two, probably sooner rather than later. I believe it was banned for Red Bull Kumite to begin with. And I'll be honest, in Master Rank, I haven't run into it when I'm playing, I haven't run into it yet. And even there are times where I suspect it, I'll go and I'll rewatch the replay and be like, nah, that guy was just legit. So, my enjoyment with Street Fighter 6 is still, I'm still at a high so far. I still really love this game.
It's a cool game.
We're just at the part where, leveling up now gets really hard because now I have to be able to whiff punish on command, and I have to really start working on leveling up my mental stack.
Yeah. And that game has a lot of that.
It does. Between throws, jump-ins, I keep wanting to call it dragon install. Drive impact, drive carry.
It is.
I have been trying to
install.
Yeah, Dragon Install.
You were correct the first time around.
Yeah. DJ be looking like he's in Dragon Install when he's fucking skippity whooping in across the screen.
Bro, that shit's a raging demon. Let's be honest. DJ's got a raging demon.
Hell yeah.
I have been using parry a lot more lately, which has led to some really clutch matches where I am definitely like supposed to lose, and I just get like that really good parry, and I'm like, not yet, motherfucker.
Hell yeah.
And that feels really good. Like landing a perfect parry in that game and like stealing a round feels so good. Because like the parry can't be option selected. Like you just have to be legit with the parry, or your opponent has to be like really, really like flowcharty, which is also the case. Parry has been very helpful versus like Marissa players because they love to do the medium heavy into the arrow, and I'm just like, well, that's a free parry, and now we'll take you to the corner. But no, I'm still like having a blast with Street Fighter 6, and I look forward to playing it a lot more. Let's see. I also finally finished and 100% completed Octopath Traveler 2.
He's finally done, y'all. This has been
56 hours later.
Jesus Christ.
He finally did it.
How does anybody play a video game for that long? My brain would melt.
That game has potential to be game of the year for me. That game is incredible. I will say probably the last 15 hours or so were me dealing with trying to get the platinum trophy, which was really simple except for the super secret like hidden boss that was just ridiculous and asked me to come up with like a broken strategy as fast as I could. But we managed to do it. But like, I don't know. Did I talk about the final boss last time we recorded? I don't think we did.
I don't think so.
No, you didn't.
Okay. Okay, cool. This has probably one of my favorite final boss sequences ever. It was so cool. I was screaming at Rob as I was going through this. It was so sick.
Can't confirm. Like, he was screaming.
Like the whole final chapter of this game where like everything comes together and like you're at the end and all these stories, like everything starts to make sense, and like the reveals that happen, you're just like, holy shit, no way. Like this, it blew my mind. It really did. Like I cannot praise this game enough. Like where the first game just threw like the sort of exposition dump on you, where like the second game kind of does, but it does it in a bit more natural way. Like it definitely will just throw some exposition on you, but again, it's nowhere near as, hey, fight these random 8 bosses and then here's like 10 pages of exposition. Like the game doesn't do that. But like the whole final I can't talk about it because I know Rob really wants to play it.
It is cute.
He will kill me.
I was gonna say this sounds like in vice versa. You talk about this game more, he's gonna murder you.
I mean, I won't kill him. I'm just gonna burn his figures.
Ooh, that's
all.
That might be worse than death.
Possibly.
But like the whole final section of the game was just so good. It's so good.
I have high expectations going into this game.
I loved it. Again, I hope it lives up to those expectations because clearly I have been the one to have just like championed this game.
You have been the one, like I have heard that this game is great. That is fantastic. Even no one has yelled about it as hard as you.
It's just it really, really hit for me.
Very curious to see where this game goes and what it does.
I'm very curious to see what characters you end up liking the most. Because, like, to be honest, I'm not sure who you'll land. I know who you won't land. Like, there's probably like 2 characters where I'm just like, yeah, these aren't Rob core characters. So he'll probably like put them to the wayside because one, they're characters I really like, so I know Rob's not going to like them. And 2, I can tell. Now, granted, I think there are characters that I really like that I also think you will like, so we'll get there. But God, Octopath Traveler 2 is just so good.
Stay
Perfect,
tuned
like
for when I play this game in August. We'll have our answers.
perfect, like soundtrack was phenomenal. Like just everything was so good. It was so good.
Hell yeah. Good shit. All right.
That's it.
Brian, you said you have been playing many a video game.
Yeah, by many I mean 2.
Hell yeah.
Nah, I mean, nothing really new per se. Anything. Still want to play Street Fighter 6. I did get to Diamond, but then I ran into a slew of people that were playing and using that Tech OS thing and everything, and it's kind of just kind of killed it for me at the moment.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of stopped playing Street Fighter 6 for right now until they patch that out. Because like I said, I probably went up against like 5 straight opponents where I could not throw them at all, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, why is this a thing? And then when I heard about the bug and saw it and saw how easy it was to use an application, I'm like, yeah, okay. It's a good time for me to just go back into doing other things I need to do. So
For sure.
yeah, so I'm kind of taking a break from that until it does get patched or anything. But yeah, I mean, I'm still kind of like enjoying Street Fighter 6 with the exception of that. Like, it's been fun. Jury is a monster in that game, and yeah,
She is a little terrorist.
she is,
Apparently not top 3 according to Haitani.
which is kind of weird.
course.
Yeah, but
Haitani is the only tier list that matters.
yeah, right.
He is the only person to have a master of every character.
I mean, listen, CEO says otherwise when there was, 6 juries in top 8 or something like that, or
Was it
6.
I think 4.
But then
Four,
Idom busted out a jury against Sky, which, by the way,
Sky.
shout out to our boy Sticky Fingers, top 4 at CEO, with including beating Idom on his way to that top 4 performance. So
With a low tier character.
yeah, with a low tier character. So shouts to our boy Sky. He's put in a lot of work for Street Fighter. We've always known how good of a player he was and everything. So for him to finally get a top 8 at a major like that and fight amongst the likes of Mena RD, Punk, Nephew, and Idom and everything, it's cool to see that he was able to get that spot and everything. So shout out to him. Good stuff. Good stuff, Sky. Really proud of you from the JSB crew. So yeah, I've been playing that, and then I've been putting in a lot of time into NIKKE on PC.
They got him.
They did get me. It's it feels just so much easier to navigate on PC than compared to mobile phone, especially with the fact that I get the full screen, so I get to see more of what's happening instead of looking at my phone and it being just the only way you can play that game is vertical. So there's quite a few differences and quite a few good things with the PC version of NIKKE. So I've been putting in a lot of time to that. I am at a little bit of a wall when it comes to leveling up right now, because the way you can do it, and it's kind of similar in Memento Mori when you first start up and everything. If you level up your lesser characters, because it doesn't take too many resources, you can kind of synchro your better characters to match those levels and everything. And then once you are able to limit break them, then you can reset the characters and then put all your resources into your better characters because they have the higher level ranks and stuff like that and everything. So you can NIKKE kind of works similar in that regard. But I am kind of
that system.
Yeah, it's actually really cool because especially when you're you get yourself one of the top tier characters, a really good character, but they're an SSR, so it's going to take forever or take longer to get duplicates of them to be able to limit break them and stuff like that and everything. It's a good way to still be able to play those characters and be able to level through like other aspects of the game, like especially if there's like a raid or like you know, a special event thing that you can do to kind of like level things up and stuff like that. So like I'm enjoying that aspect and everything, but I have kind of hit the wall where like there's a certain resource I had to get in order to like keep leveling up the other characters that I have. But this particular resource takes forever to get, and so like the time consumption of constantly having to farm for that particular like resource to be able to do what you need to do, it's a little bit rough. Now it's not like super tedious, but it definitely, you have that feeling of like, okay, this is gonna take me a while. Very similar to like when I was playing Memento Mori and you know I was running into issue where like there was a resource I couldn't get and stuff like that at the time, and so because like just trying to continue to battle through that and everything. So I'm kind of in that spot right now with NIKKE, but I'm still enjoying it. The events and the banners are pretty cool. And haven't really gotten like bored of anything quite yet with the game. Like I'm not suffering like any like fatigue from it yet. I know like when we were talking about Memento Mori last time we played, I know you said you weren't necessarily getting a little fatigued, but you weren't like logging in as much and stuff like that to get things and everything. Like
I'm like slowly like waning off of it.
Yeah, and then like I haven't gotten to that point yet. But you know, I definitely can like notice and understand like why it could get to that point and stuff like that and everything. So but it's been pretty fun. And like I said, there's nothing really thrilling about the gameplay. It's just point and click and shoot things, and there you go.
It's a light gun shooter. Yeah, it's a light gun shooter RPG. Yeah,
but with that said, it's a lot easier for me personally anyway. It's a lot easier to navigate on PC and everything and stuff like that. So that's where I've been putting a lot of my time into that. Let's see. As far as like anything else I've played lately, nothing really. I did boot Muse Dash back up because they just released new stuff for their 6-year celebration. So they released like another character skin and some new songs and stuff like that and everything. That rhythm game is probably my favorite rhythm game to play, to be honest. Like I know like Project Diva is like the most popular one, most likely out of all of them, and I still enjoy it. But yeah, I don't know. It's all about Muse Dash. Like I really like their OST and the tracks they chose and stuff like that. And probably because like just there's a lot of different like variety with it that I'm kind of like I can get behind this, especially with like all the different collabs they've done. From DJ Max being included in there to like the Arc Knight collab that they did a while back and stuff, and so like they have like a lot of neat little collabs.
A lot of variety in there.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of where I'm at with that. But I mean, outside of that, that's been pretty much it. Nothing really too new or like nothing I can really provide a super in-depth discussion with because like
Did you see the updates happening to Eternal Return?
You know what? Yes, I did. It's taken away my one reason why I played the game to begin with, I think. And that makes me super sad.
It's unfortunate, dude.
Yeah, you know what? I was on a happy note, and then that got brought up, and I'm like, oh yeah, bad feelings.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about it, or I wanted to see if you had saw it, because like for anybody that doesn't know, like Eternal Return, they're finally going into that 1.0 very very soon. Which is very cool, right? Like that game was in like early access beta period for the past like year and a half or however long we've been fucking talking about that game. Yeah. So it's cool that they finally got to a point where they're doing 1.0, and they did an animation like teaser trailer thing that actually is really sick looking.
Yeah, the animation was really cool.
Yeah.
It had my girl NIKKE in it.
Yeah, NIKKE was in it. And they announced like a bunch of new characters that are coming, which they all look really fucking cool.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Here's the problem. So they, due to like server population, especially within the West, and how it's like been pretty low, they are disabling the solo play and focusing on squad play.
And that makes me super, super sad.
It is really unfortunate because one of the highlights of this game was the fact that you can pick it up by yourself and just play it. You know?
Yeah.
That is how I played most of my time with Eternal Return, with some duos here and there with Drew. But it was always a case of like, if I wanted to play it, I could just boot it up and play myself, and I am good.
And I don't play well with others, so that's why, like, you know, I enjoyed the solo mode aspect, because I was just like, neat, I can play this game and just, you know, do my own thing. And hey, if something bad happens or like I mess up something or whatever, well, that's the reason why I fucked up.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and that sucks. And I mean, they didn't say it was like permanent, right? It could always come back later. And I understand the reasoning, because like you do kind of have to funnel the population into like a mode, right? Especially because it queue times and everything has been getting like worse for that game over time.
It has,
particularly within the West, right? Like in other areas, it's good. So you focus in on the mode that is the most popular for them, which is squad. So like I get it. It just sucks for us. You know, I wish them the best of luck, and I hope they get to a point where they can reopen it. But man, I was very sad about that.
I was very hyped when I saw the animated video, and I'm like, right, this looks great. This is, you know, and then the other stuff came about, and I'm like, happy feeling gone.
Happy feeling gone. Rio got a new costume, and that shit looks so sick. It looks
really cool. Yeah. I was a little saddened by that, to say the least. I was just like, man, the one, you know, this is why I can't have nice things.
This is why we can't have nice things, y'all.
Yeah.
This is why.
Because it just gets taken away.
Rest in peace, the JSB Eternal Return segment.
At least for the time being. It has been
a pleasure. At least for the time being, it is being sunsetted. It has been a pleasure exploring Lumina Island with you folks.
And escaping Lumina Island now.
And escaping, right? We've survived. We have escaped. We have died many a times.
Yes.
I hope there's a future where we can go back to our home.
Yeah. That was indeed a sad moment when I saw that. Like, that sucks.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, but as you said, they didn't say it was permanent. It's just for the time being.
Yeah, just focus in on what's succeeding and go from there. Wish them the best of luck.
Yeah, I mean, because they have definitely come a long way from
really
where they were to what it is now. So, like I said, I'm still happy for them. I still hope nothing but the best. But yeah, it's just like, you know, bring it back at some point.
Just ping us when it's back. You know? Just let us know.
Just let us know. We're not going away. Just let us know.
Just let us know. We'll be back. Yeah. We swear.
Yeah.
With that out of the way, any last minute thoughts on anything before we wrap this up? Before I go pet my my dog Torgal.
Super Mario RPG remake's pretty hype.
Did we talk about that last time? The Nintendo Direct?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't think we did.
Yeah. Oh, I thought
the Nintendo Direct was last week.
Oh. I could have swore we talked about it on something. And anyway, Super Mario RPG getting the remake, which looks very cool. I'm excited for it. It was one of those things where, like, for me, I think I pretty much got like spoiled on that announcement in a way, which kind of like took the wind out of my sails. But I am very, very excited for it. I am very, very excited for it because that is one of my favorite games as well. I didn't know how I felt about the art style at first, and now I love it. it was kind of a weird thing when I watched that trailer initially. It is not in my brain. It is not what I thought a remake of that game would be. And then I watched it several more times, and I was like, no, this is great. This is very, very good what they're doing. And that's very, very cool. The new Mario game, the 2D Mario game, looks also really good. What were they calling it? Super Mario. Wonder. Yeah. That game is just eternal touch fuzzy get dizzy. And I'm about it. Which is also really cool because like the art style for that game looks really good. And one of the things
really tight.
Yeah. And one of the things that really turned me off of like New Super Mario Brothers was the art style. And I particularly like don't really care for those games. Because of like the visuals aesthetic, and it just like feels off to me whenever I play it. But seeing this one, I'm very excited for a 2D Mario. Like just seeing how it's animated and how it looks, and then like the wacky mechanics that are at play as well. I'm like, this is gonna be good. I think this is gonna be really good. So I'm excited about that. What else is in the direct? It's worth pointing out. Like overall, it was a really good one. Star Ocean 2 remake. That looks fantastic. So that is like an evolution of like that HD 2D style that like I look forward to. Like that is a different take on that stuff, and I'm like, that looks great. I'm very excited to play that. It's been a very long time since I played that game. I feel like there was some other stuff in there too that I am blanking on.
Those are the big ones that stuck out to me.
What was the 3D platformer from the Sonic Mania guy? That looked really cool to me. I'm very, very excited for that game. Because I love 3D platformers. Nintendo Direct.
Remind us what you had.
I just want the name of that game. Because I think when I think about that direct, I think that's like really what pops up a lot of the times in my brain. And I'm always forgetting what it... Penny's Big Breakaway. That's what it is. Definitely look into that stuff. I found it weird that they're bringing the Batman Arkham trilogy to Switch. I'm like, that's a very odd decision.
That game's old.
One of those games is really fucking good. I would argue you don't need the other ones.
Which one?
I also Arkham Asylum. I think Arkham Asylum is my favorite. One of my favorite games.
Asylum
that game is fucking
really
sick.
Yeah.
One of the worst final boss fights, but the game itself is really fucking good.
I mean, the combat in that game was super linear and stuff like that to begin with, so
it felt good, and I think it over the course of several games and other games also doing it, like kind of wore out its welcome.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah. New Detective Pikachu 2, which is very cool. Which they announced that previously, but we got a first look of it. And I don't know if anybody played the first one.
Is that not a port of the original?
No, it's a sequel. Detective Pikachu 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That first game is really good. I enjoyed that game a lot. So that's something that I'm also looking forward to out of that direct. I think I'm very disappointed by the WarioWare game. I don't know if anybody WarioWare fans.
I'm not big into WarioWare.
Nah,
I love those. I love those games. I'm less thrilled about the motion ones, and this is all motion based. So I feel like those games aren't as interesting to me, or also can be like very fickle because motion controls are very fickle, you know. I hope it's good, but I don't have a lot of faith in it. I would like a new traditional like WarioWare game. There's some other cool stuff in there, but I won't like drag this out any longer than it needs to be. It'll just be me talking about every game that they announced and my feelings on them. So with that, let's wrap this up. Let's get out of here. I got a dog to pet. Torgals a good boy. Everybody pet your Torgals. Ryan.
Rob.
Where can people find you?
Let's see. Twitter for now until it explodes for the 900th time.
It is on the verge of exploding.
That's been that way forever, but yes, even more so now not. But Twitter, RCB_draws. That's where you can see a lot of my artwork that I'm working on. In fact, a new piece I'm working on right now, since we're talking about NIKKE, it's a fan art piece of Noir that I'm working on, if you guys know who she is. So I'm working on that. Also, if you go on my Twitter, you'll see a link to my online store for stickers and prints of some of my work. So definitely check that out if you can. If you guys see something you like, let me know, and I can send it to you if you want.
Hell yeah.
So that's pretty much where you can find me for the most part and everything. So until the server itself for Twitter explodes.
Hell yeah.
Or gets scripted out.
Got to make sure that you're one of like the 600 tweets I am allowed to see. Christopher, where can people find you and your
I
stuff?
go on Twitter for the time being at JSB Totally Drew. I haven't really been tweeting much other than Street Fighter stuff.
Yeah, because 600 posts, you gotta use it sparingly.
Yeah, people aren't gonna waste their 600 tweets on me, so I ain't worried about it.
I will.
Same.
I appreciate that.
Got you. You can find me on PSN petting Torgal. I will not give you my
I do
PSN
appreciate that you
account.
can actively pet Torgal.
I am so mad that like the trophy rate for Torgal pets is like low.
Oh, there's a trophy?
Yeah,
There
how many times did you pet Torgal, Drew?
Not enough, apparently. Didn't get the damn trophy.
Clearly. I am so upset right now. He is the goodest boy. You couldn't pet him at least 5 times?
To be fair, I didn't realize it was a thing until right
You
before this
couldn't
podcast.
pet Torgal 5 times, Drew? You didn't even attempt to pet Torgal before this podcast?
I didn't know it was a thing.
You didn't even go up to him and be like, yo, hey, Torgal, and then just notice the prompt?
Damn.
I can't with you. I can't.
I think we
I'm
found
shutting down this podcast. I'm shutting down this podcast.
I think we found our podcast title. Drew Hates Torgal.
Drew hates Torgal. Confirmed. I'm so upset. I am so upset.
That is
End the show. It is over. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for being here. Drew hates Torgal. Bye, y'all.
Sheesh. Unbelievable, Drew. Unbelievable.
I don't know, class over to a lawyer. Be all right.